today we have a distinguished guest. Tim Tetzlaff is with us. He is currently the global head of program and product Accelerated Digitalization at DHL Supply Chain. So that's a mouthful. He will tell us what all these words mean in a second, I guess. But what I gather from our conversations so far is that he'll talk about more or less what is summarized in this picture. Automation in shop floors, in various ways of systems that can support corporate supply chains. Let's put it that way. But
yes.
Tim will say more about this.
Yeah.
Just a few more words before you can take over, Tim. You have lots of experience in business development and technology. So I look at your LinkedIn profile. You did lots of internships during your studies, which is quite impressive. Also with consulting companies and so on. So Tim really knows this stuff. He has an honors degree from the Center for Digital Technology and Management, which is an institution that is jointly run by LMU Munich and the Technical University in Munich. So that's basically HEC Lausanne and EPFL joining forces and making an elite program for very talented students. And Tim is an alumni of this one. And he has a bachelor and a master in management from LMU Munich. And I mention this because I'm very proud that I was his thesis supervisor back in 2013. So. So with that said, Tim, the floor is yours. I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Christian. Yeah, so I think just I'll try to share my screen in between and also go to a brief introduction. But I think what you already mentioned, two key points. Yeah. So I think probably longest job title that I'm aware of. Yeah. So Christian mentioned. It's a mouthful. I always say like it's more than fits on a business card, but I'll outline to you guys what's behind that in a second. And then I think also interesting. So 7 years ago, Christian, that you were my thesis advisor at the University of Munich. Yeah, so also interesting, and very, very happy to be here today. Because also worked actually with consulting after university, and now I've been working with in the logistics industry for 6-7 years, and mostly focusing on digitalization, and excited to be here today. And what I'll try to do today is like a quick introduction, also like to my background and my path to this position today, and then I kind of split the whole guest lecture into 2 sections. One is more on digitalization in logistics, really. So Christian had this picture of the humanoid robot in a forklift. Yeah, so that element, which may not yet be exactly what we see in our warehouses across the world, but really digitalization in logistics is one thing I wanted to look into today, and then also showing digitalization in how we manage digital transformation in a global organization like Deutsche Post, DHL, and DHL Supply Chain. Yeah, it's like I brought, I don't know, so let me check, 16 slides today. We'll share those as well. But I'm happy also to answering some questions in between that come up. I'm very excited about this topic. So that also means if you don't interrupt me and don't ask questions, I will likely talk for the entire time. But Christian, I think in that sense, it's just important if you guys let me know if there are any questions. I'm happy to pick them up both during the presentation, but then also for a Q&A afterwards. And then maybe just like last question before we get started. So it's 2:30 now. So do we have until when do we actually have? Just that I have this on my radar as well.
Until 4.
Okay, perfect.
And we usually do like a 10 minutes break after 45 minutes. But I think we're flexible on that.
Cool. Very good. Yeah, no, but because I think it's I think it's a cool topic, and I'm happy then also if we have some interaction in between. It was nice to hear when Christian talked about network effects and creative machines. Yeah, and I think we've been through the introduction already, but just quickly what I do at the moment. So what's behind this this very long job title of Global Head of Program and Product Accelerated Digitalization at DHL Supply Chain. So what I do in a global role is I lead our digitalization agenda at DHL Supply Chain in the logistics industry. So DHL Supply Chain is the world's largest contract logistics provider. That means we provide warehousing, storage, so to say, and transportation services to clients from all sectors. Yeah, so we'll look into a couple of examples later on through this lectures, but in the end, you can always think about that companies like H&M or Zalando, they actually don't see their competitive advantage in storing goods, but they see their advantage in advertising, designing, and so on. And we would then take over the logistics behind. So both inbound into warehouses, but then also storing, for instance, in Switzerland or in Germany, and delivering to the point of sale, for instance, in that example, fashion customers. But we also do that for automotive. So you could also imagine a favorite example, Audi, or other automotive companies have their production facilities, but they don't do all the storage of parts they need for cars themselves. What DHL Supply Chain would then, for instance, have a warehouse and transportation service close to the production facility and provide a service called inbound to manufacturing. So concepts like lean, and that you don't store all the car doors in your production facility, because that takes up valuable space, but you do that somewhere else, and we would then every day deliver car parts into that production facility. Yeah, but that's what DHL Supply Chain does in a nutshell. And I've been, prior to then looking into accelerating digitalization at DHL Supply Chain, prior to that role, we'll look into what that means in a second as well. Been working with DHL Consulting, so that's the internal consulting firm of Deutsche Post, DHL, and on all kinds of different projects, all in the logistics industry. But I was in, for instance, in Egypt, more on the container shipping side of things, consulting project for implementing a new software system, but also, I mean, around the world, really, in different locations, looking also into different supply chain optimization projects. That would really be, where should you position your warehouses to satisfy a certain customer need? And basically, then my last project in DHL Consulting was setting up the Accelerated Digitalization program, and I had the luck, I think, when I was, if I was still a student, this would always what I would aim for. I had the luck to kind of shape my new full-time role myself. Yeah, so this started as a consulting project, but we then actually transitioned into DHL Supply Chain from the consulting firm, and now for 2 years I've been working on that agenda with a team from across the world. Yeah. But that's maybe just briefly on myself. Also happy to answer more questions later on. And I just took some notes, which I'll try also to cover today. So Christian mentioned creative machines, demand and supply effects, which I also like to tick off a bit when we go through our story here today. And then also platforms and enabling direct interaction between players. For me, not so much Instagram and connecting eyeballs to advertisements, but maybe connecting robots and other creative machines to our warehouse management IT. Yeah, so sounds not as exciting as I think it is, but let's look into that later on. Cool, but then,
Tim, a quick question.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between digitalization and digitization?
Oh, very good question, Christian. So digitization is really, for me, I mean, the process of turning analog information into digital formats, digitization. Yeah, so that is purely what may be on paper before, what may be not readable by a computer, turning that into, at the end of the day, ones and zeros so that the computer can read it. Yeah, and then digitalization, we'll look into the definition that we have at DPDHL in a second, but is then actually using that digitized information to change business models or improve current operations. I think this definition is by the research firm Gartner, but I think that captured it quite well. But it's an important point, I think, that is often confused, but it's really For me, digitization is purely turning analog, non-computer readable information into digital formats, which are then computer readable. And digitalization is then generating value from that, be it new business processes, new business models, more efficient organizations, and so on. But that's for me the key difference. And we'll look into both aspects today, actually, a bit. Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, maybe just on that one, because so I also have a background also in data science, not massive experience, but I actually also worked on yeah, some optimization and machine learning scripts myself, which is a nice link then to also some of this robotics work. I'm so also happy to have a discussion on these points with you. Good. Then just briefly, so I assume that most of you know Deutsche Post DHL, but wanted to quickly out as always, I think never assume anything but positive intent. So I don't want to assume that everybody is aware of where I spend most of the hours in home office at the moment. But Deutsche Post DHL is really, is the I think largest logistics company in the world, but has 4 different business units, so to say, 4 big divisions. One is called Post and Parcel Germany. So that is really in Germany the typical mail and parcel business. Then there is DHL Express, and DHL Express is international time-definite delivery of documents. Yeah, so this is typically the use case. Easiest one is you I don't know, forgot your driver's license, but you went on a trip to before COVID, you went on a trip to Latin America, and now you need to have a driver's license and you need it urgently, then DHL Express would ensure that from Switzerland or Germany, it's sent to wherever you are in less than a day. Yeah, so that's DHL Express. Then there is DHL Global Forwarding and Freight. That is a container shipment, but really not asset heavy, so not owning your own vessels or your own trucks, but more like a travel agency for containers. Yeah. So example, you move from Sydney to Cologne, where I am at the moment, and then you would call DHL Global Forwarding and say, I need a container in Sydney at my doorstep on that day. I'll fill it up with all my furniture and stuff that I own, and I need it in Cologne at that address in 4 weeks, 8 weeks from now. And then DHL Global Forwarding would take care of pick up of that container at your doorstep, delivery to the port, handling of the container within the port, putting it on a vessel, then vessel transfer to, for instance, Port of Amsterdam, pick up over there, and so on. That's what DHL Global Forwarding does. And then DHL Supply Chain is the 4th division, which is contract logistics, as I outlined in the beginning. Yeah? All of these divisions roughly same size in terms of revenue, 15 billion euros. And of course, this last year, 2020, really, one of the companies that benefited actually from the e-commerce boom due to the pandemic situation. So I think will be most likely the same for you, but lots of online ordering then also led to lots of more business for us. Yeah. And what I put on here is then really just context for digitalization at Deutsche Post DHL. But we actually covered that point already. So Christian asked about definition, digitalization versus digitization. And the point I outlined here, so I mean, there's lots of strategy things on here. So of course, a strategy house, I think that's also when in doubt and whenever in your life you have to come up with a strategy framework, I think a house with purpose on top, that's always good. And then there are some building blocks in between, and there are a million different shapes of this, but this typically always works. So we also have one of those. And digitalization for us then is really this technology exploitation. That's what I meant with digitalization, to improve current business models, to also maybe find new ways of doing things. And then business exploration, that element would be really finding completely new business models based on what we do as a logistics company. Yeah, so that would then really be something that we don't sell yet, don't have in our service portfolio, but really a different business model to what we do in a logistics company. For instance, using all the data that we have to predict global trade, or consulting companies and saying, hey, based on the trade flows that we see across the world, you should actually position your logistics footprint slightly differently. Good, but that was all on Deutsche Post DHL. I really wanted then to focus on my role at DHL Supply Chain. Mentioned this already in the beginning to some extent, largest contract logistics company in the world. You actually see, yeah, I think just like one of our warehouses behind. Yeah, as you can see, it's at the end of the day, 4 walls, very large warehouses with, for instance, pallet storage here in the back. That's then bulk storage of pallets on racks. And then over here, this would then be forward storage. For instance, you could think if you have full pallets of phones or printer cartridges or something like that back here, if you order online, no one will actually open one of these pallets, but you would actually have a so-called picker go into one of these locations and then pick in your order from a piece picking location on these shelves. Yeah, and that's one example. You can see it's like a technology warehouse, this one, of what that looks like. You also see a couple of conveyor belts, but you can also imagine already on here, typically you have then forklifts driving around here in the back, and then a couple of conveyors that move goods around, but also humans that actually pick the goods, pack them, and then make them ready for shipping. Yeah. Maybe to give you an idea of the scale of our business, so 50 countries globally, more than 156,000 employees, and around 2,000 of these locations across the world. Yeah, and we're active in all in all regions. So Latin America, North America, then we've got UKI, we've got Europe, and Asia Pacific, and also on all the different sectors. Yeah, so I outlined the example at the beginning, H&M and Zalando, for instance, that would be retail, but also automotive we talked about, technology, life science. So all of these sectors we serve. Yeah, so you can see very heterogeneous customer portfolio, and then also very large scale with 2,000 sites and hundreds of thousands of employees.
What is the difference between consumer and retail?
So retail would really be where also it would be customers where you would actually you could think you order yourself. So you buy, for instance, your shirts at H&M or like Primark and so on. And consumer goods can also be the typical large consumer brands, so Unilever or Kraft Heinz. So where you would, there we would store full pallets of ketchup, but we do not break it down, and you would never order a B2C a pallet of ketchup, but we would deliver this then, for instance, to restaurants or also to other Unilever smaller distribution warehouses and break it down then. Yeah, but I think that's the main difference here. Yeah? So you would, I think, easily explained in retail, you could also think of more B2C, where consumer would be generally B2B. But we're also seeing some of that changing, because you could then also see if now one of the big brands creates an online shop, they may say, oh, you know what, we actually fulfill that online shop straight from our central distribution center. That would be then the trend called omni-channel as well. So you as a consumer, you would just order and you wouldn't even know, does it come from a store in my city? Does it come from a central warehouse? Does it come from a different storage location? Yeah, but that's I think the main difference there. Cool. Good. And then why is this industry so interesting for digitalization? And I think this slide is also something, first of all, I hope that Christian likes, because it's an S-curve. And I think most of humanity's problems can be explained with S-curves. But it's also, I think it's nothing massively new on here. Yeah? But the message is, this industry, at the end, moving stuff, yeah, in all shapes or forms, is on the brink of disruption for digitalization. While other industries already have been disrupted. Yeah, so I think just a key example, and I'm sure you discussed this already. Maybe you also have it on actually one of the later lectures, but media, Blockbuster, or also video cassettes, even DVDs. I mean, that really fundamentally changed now, with Netflix, Amazon Prime, and all these guys. And also for telecom, insurance, and banking, online banking maybe way more prevalent than standard retail banking is right now. And I think the thing for logistics is, we are really in the business of moving goods, and that is still something which is not a digital first business model, because it's real stuff. Yeah, so media, I think there you just can definitely transfer media files and so on over the internet anyway for logistics. Of course, 3D printing may at one point in time be a bit of a substitute, but where we really see us right now is that we can leverage the digital opportunity to actually complement the human workforce to actually be more efficient to move pallets, move boxes, move shipments, move orders as fast as possible, but also as affordable as possible. Yeah, and it's happening. Yeah, Christian. Yeah, sorry.
So sorry, go on. I just had a comment on this.
Yeah, you go. You go ahead first.
So I think sort of what describes the differences between these industries could be sort of the level of digitization in the sense that you described it, sort of turning information into zeros and ones. And so, with the physical goods, there's just a limit on how much you can do that. And a couple of weeks ago we talked about how music, movies and so on, there are essentially information, and so it's just putting it into a digital format. It's just a different way of storing the information.
Yeah.
And so that's interesting because then you can put these two things, the digitization and digitalization, they're basically now both on your graph to some extent.
Yeah. Or Christian, so when we're at that point where we say S curves explain a lot, I think also a 2x2 matrix often explains a lot. And if we now would say physical good, information good, and then digitization, you would also come to a similar conclusion. Yeah. And I think just here also taking a step back. So what's really, I think maybe just an insight from my work also, also in logistics, so material handling. So, just picking, I don't know, an iPhone, yeah, or picking a shirt from a hanging from a garment hanger and putting it on in the end shopping trolley that is then pushed through these aisles. It's very easy for a human being, but it is not so easy for a robot. Yeah, so this idea that a robot can grasp and has soft grip actually, which all humans have. Yeah, so for all of us, it's actually not a problem to pick up a glass, and then next thing I'll do is I'll pick up something very, very soft with my hands. Yeah, and that's something which is super easy to do for a human being. But what we really see in logistics as well, and why that is also still an opportunity, and it is happening right now, is that handling very conform, similar shopkeeping units, like just shoeboxes, that's fine. Yeah, but now if that shoebox comes from China and was wet, has like a dent, has a different label on there, suddenly all of that gets difficult, and that's for a human being always is no problem. Yeah, so for you it doesn't matter, if it's different handwriting, or if there is a dent in that shoebox. That's for us always easy, but for a computer to then recognize what type of good it is, or even to handle it, that's more challenging. Yeah, but that is also why we say this is happening right now, and that's exactly what I work in then in accelerating digitalization for Deutsche Post DHL Supply Chain. Yeah, and now we'll actually look into what is behind that program. Yeah, and we look. That's when I want to tick off the first of the concepts that Christian outlined in the beginning, kind of the demand for digitalization and then the supply we see in the market space for logistics. Yeah, and so let's first of all look into the demand, because what we really see in logistics is ever increasing customer expectations. Yeah, so I think all of us very happily shop online, and we also expect, I think with Amazon now, depending where you live, you expect actually delivery at least tomorrow, if not same day, and you also expect it to be free of charge, and you expect everything to be available always. Yeah, and that's of course, if you now look into these increasing customer demands, if you look at this picture here, these warehouses, they haven't been built just yesterday, but this industry is long standing, has lots of legacy, but that puts lots of pressure to actually fulfill these demands for everyone in the industry. And as a customer, you will just say, oh, wait a sec, this is like €7 delivery and it takes 3 days. No, I'm gonna order on Amazon because they'll have it over at my place tomorrow. Yeah, so that's one of the key drivers why actually also the logistics industry is looking into digitalization to satisfy those needs. Second point is, and it's also crucial, we see tightening labor markets for logistics, not only in high labor cost countries, but across the world. So the demand for labor that we have to fulfill these customer needs is so high that there's actually almost not a chance to satisfy all of this effectively going forward. Yeah, and maybe 2 examples. First of all, funny thing is, if you look at Europe, and you look where the big cities are, there is a very prime location which is called the logistics banana, but it's basically if you go from the UK, Birmingham, and then go through Benelux, through Germany, if you have a distribution center in that area, you can basically fulfill all like 80% of cities throughout Europe within 1 to 2 days. Yeah, so these are prime locations from a geographic perspective, and there, for instance, it's a squeeze for labor because you can't even find that many people that want to work in logistics then. And the second example was from our own experience at DHL Supply Chain. Typically around November and December, Christmas coming around the corner, and people get busy ordering online. And what we honestly do is sometimes we shuttle students from universities into our warehouses so that they can actually support us in peak season to help picking orders, because we just don't find any other labor. Yeah, and that's then also something which just shows the squeeze on the labor market. And then also already maybe a point for discussion. This does mean that the application of robots or also optimization tools is not so much for replacing human labor, but it's really about complementing human labor and having a workforce where the different skills are most optimally utilized. So humans shouldn't just walk around. I mean, walking around is basically in lean speech, waste. The value adding activity is actually when you pick a good or when you pack it, that's value adding. But the walking could actually be done by, for instance, a robot. And we'll look into some examples on that later on. Yeah. And maybe this effect of labor markets really, we also see it in Mexico, even in Asian markets, and that will only increase going forward. Yeah. But then, so I think, yeah.
Can
Yes,
I ask
please.
one question on that?
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure.
I was just wondering, when there's especially this kind of seasonal demand, right?
Mhm.
Maybe it's also difficult for the labor, because I'm not sure how you handle that, but students are very flexible, right? So like more flexible than other labor, right? So maybe is this the point, that you don't need the labor for the whole year, and that's why you're just like seasonally looking for some extra supply of employees?
Yeah. Yeah, a very fair point. So like for all, like we distinguish also for all our operations between permanent and temporary labor. Yeah, like there's also like actually then several separate entities that are just like labor agencies that we also then work with to balance that peak. Yeah, because for a company it wouldn't be efficient to always have maximum permanent employee levels to keep November and December running, and then in January, February, March we basically say, oh, all of us have nothing to do, but we still have to pay everyone. So we work with temp labor, and it's a good point. But even that has its limits. Yeah, and I think this idea, and maybe we can come back to that one, of balancing most flexibly where it is needed right now. Yeah, because mentioned the point on seasonal peaks. Yeah. But there's also, the different seasonal peaks by a sector. So you could think, for instance, wait a sec. So I have retail and consumer that will go high in December and November. Okay, what does automotive actually do? Is there any peaks in production over the year, or is it maybe more stable? What about life science and healthcare? Yeah, so I would say life science and healthcare at the moment. So with the COVID vaccinations, maybe not so much in Germany, but that's a different story. Yeah, but suddenly there's a huge rush towards stocking life science and healthcare warehouses. Yeah, and I think that balancing, now again, and we'll come back to that, is an opportunity where I think DHL Supply Chain, we are large and we have physical brick and mortar locations, and that may even be an advantage in that space. Yeah, because we can balance these type of seasonal and also sectorial fluctuations. Yeah, okay. But maybe also keep for the discussion. Yeah, we can come back to that one as well. Cool. Yeah, and please keep the questions coming. Yeah. The last point on this one was really that with this situation, that digitalization actually is a means to excel in that marketplace. Yeah, and so just wanted on this page then to say, if you're interested in, I'll show some videos in a second, but what else is behind? I mean, on YouTube, if you just enter digitalization, robots in logistics, you'll see lots of amazing clips of what you could do. Yeah, so robotic arms that do piece picking, autonomous mobile robots that very nimbly move around the warehouse and so on. So there is really great technology that can address these points, and then given a certain customer demand but scarce human labor to satisfy that demand, really balancing robotic, automated, and human labor to be successful in that space. Yeah. But also, just like if anyone is interested, really can look into some of these words on here. This like more logistics details. Yeah. So grid sorters, voice picking and so on. But I think there's always a good video online, and then just like the only caveat I'll leave on that one is you can shoot lots of videos until you have the best shot. Yeah, so you don't see typically on YouTube when it didn't work. Yeah, but against that background now, so what is actually accelerated digitalization? And it's again, to quote Christian Peukert, a mouthful, but there is some meaning in each of the words on this slide. Yeah. So what we do at DHL Supply Chain with accelerated digitalization is bringing key digital technologies to a wider number of operations through an orchestrated and agile approach. Yeah. So very long. I'll actually go briefly through these points, because first thing is, key digital technologies does not mean everything, not all digital technologies. Yeah? So we look at maturity and also scalability and impact across our business. Yeah? And this means, one example, there's lots of videos of drones out there, and drones make a great case for videos, but really the real impact for us in supply chain is limited, because you can't do any deliveries yet, and also internally, for instance, for checking your inventory, it's not as good as other solutions yet. So that means really key digital technologies are a certain portfolio of 12 that we look at in a second. To a wider number of operations also means not all operations, but it means where it fits. Yeah. So we saw on this picture in the beginning there was pallet storage, and there was this forward picking location with shelf storage, where you do piece picking really of single items. And of course, different technologies apply then to different of these use cases. So you can think about fully autonomous forklifts that would be in the back of the warehouse, and you can think of other technologies that would actually be more applicable in the front of the warehouse. And of course, that's also then different by sector, and it is different by region of the world, because depending on what the technology costs, you will have different payback periods depending on labor costs of a certain region. And then lastly, orchestrated and agile approach. Orchestrated means that we work with transparency across the entire world. So I'll show that as well. So that means I could tell you right now, for any of our projects, no matter where it is on the world, what the status of that project is, and where we have some roadblocks for implementation and so on. That's the orchestrated bit. And then agile approach means that we plan, inspect, adapt. So I don't know how many of you are Scrum certified or interested in Scrum, but really the idea that you don't think about something and develop it completely and then roll it out, but that we plan, inspect, and adapt. I'll come back to one concrete example of that in a second. Yeah. So this agile approach also meaning unlimited ideas, and when we then test these ideas, and if we say, okay, they are scalable and can be applicable to a wider number of our operations, we move them forward to productization. And I have a team of 5 product development managers in my global function. They would then look for the technology category for vendors, work on agreements, work on assessment tools that we know where does it actually fit, and then roll that out jointly to our operations with regional and country teams, so that we really industrialize that technology. That is something which we had in place for 2 years now. And if you look at this in summary, so of course there are unlimited innovative ideas. That's my comment on YouTube. We currently have 12 focus technologies, which we'll see on the next page. I think, 12 focus technologies, but this agile approach also meant we actually started with 14, but then saw after a year, 4 of those are not mature enough yet. So we narrowed the portfolio to 10, and now beginning of last year, moved to 12 technologies. Yeah, I mean, it's also this idea of planning, inspecting, and then adapting to market requirements. Working with 90 partners, and I mean these are numbers of end of 2020, 3,600 opportunities, touched 590 of our customers, and had, I think by now we can look at it in a second just as an example, but more than 1,700 go lives in our operations already.
Just before you go on, sorry,
yep.
if you just could come back to the slide exactly. How are your 5 project managers divided? Are they divided by country or by revenue type, like consumer, retail?
Yeah. So my organizationally, so my product development managers are actually linked to a technology category. Yeah, so they look across the entire globe, but their responsibility is really ensuring that this product is ready for deployment wherever it fits. Yeah, and then I have in each region a counterpart that is a regional lead, and this person again has a counterpart in the country, which is then responsible for the country. So one example, let's say in Germany, close to Munich, there is a site for pallet movements, and we think like the site manager for that site thinks that's a great case for an autonomous forklift. Then this person would get in contact with our country accelerated digitalization lead and says, hey, that's a cool case. This would then be channeled to the regional person who works then with me and my team and says, okay, does it really fit? And if it does, which type of pallet movement technology would work? But that means also, so this behind this simple looking slide, there is a big organization, which is my team. So 5 product development managers allocated across 12 technology categories. I also have a team of 2 program managers that help me with the entire target operating model and program management aspects. And then in each region, we have 1 responsible regional lead. And then depending on the setup of the region, either sector leads, that's your point from the automotive and so on. And for instance, North America is basically United States of America. So there is no country in there. They are organized by sector. But in Europe, then, for instance, you would have a contact also for Germany and Alps in that case. So Germany and Austria.
Okay, so most of it, if I understand it correctly, most of the times the ideas or the needs come from bottom up. It's not you that impose to this site that they have a forklift, but I guess when one specific new technology that could revolutionize everything, then it comes from top bottom. Then it's you that implement it and kind of force it.
It's a very, very good thought. Like really, because that's, so I mentioned we're 156,000 people, and of course the idea is we go always bottom up and top down. That means we do lots of communication. So also like what I talk about you today, I'm very sorry to say, but I actually didn't build these slides just for you. So we'll share them with you, but like also I give this speech internally slightly differently, but oftentimes, so that your point, Florian, on bottom up, that we actually want people out of that pool of 156,000, going on our internal webpage, calling us, using our tools and say, hey, I want to do it. At the same time, there's millions of priorities. And then we also, of course, for these 2,000 sites, we know what is the sector, how large is it, what type of good is handled there, what's the labor cost rate, what's the picking profile. So I can also tell you, what would be for a certain technology the 100 seemingly best fitting sites. So we go then, of course, bottom up, people engaging with us, but we also say, hey, Germany lead. So these are for the technology, the 6 highest priority sites. Please let us know, why doesn't this work? What else shall we do? And then we would go into discussion, and then he may say, oh, the customer wants to renew his contract next year, and once that is done, then we can look into the technology. Or we say, hey, labor cost is still too low for making this a good business case, but then we could think about subsidizing things and so on. So that's really the discussions, goes both directions.
Okay.
We can look into some examples in a second as well if we have time in the Q&A. And then just like, because we talk now a lot about process and so on, but so what are these 12 technology categories? And I think the easiest distinction is really what we look at is collaborative robotics and then software-based automation. Yeah. And in collaborative robotics, it's again this idea, these are things which don't yet completely replace the human being. So it's not a Boston Dynamics robot that can do backflips that then sits in a forklift, like the picture that Christian had in the beginning. Yeah, but it's more collaborative. So working with a human being. Yeah, just like briefly what these, for instance, then are assisted picking. So you can really think this is just a shopping trolley that autonomously moves through those aisles. Yeah, and that means when you are in a supermarket, you push your trolley and you go pick up some milk, and then you push it forward and you get some cheese and so on. Yeah, but now think in a warehouse, wouldn't it be more efficient if we had one person, for instance, if it's a day where cheese is needed, that stands at the cheese counter, and this trolley actually moves over and says, "Hey, put five packets of Gouda in this box," and then it just moves on, and you don't have all the walking, but basically the human being is responsible for an area in the supermarket, or in our case, the warehouse. Yeah.
Tim, you can talk about Gouda in Switzerland.
Sorry, I meant Gruyere. Is that okay?
That's perfect.
Okay, Gruyere. Yeah, so let's think about a Gruyere warehouse for the second robot then here. I mean, this is goods to person. And then the thing is not that the robot drives to the shelves, but actually that the shelf itself moves. Yeah. And so I think we have a video on this one next after this slide. But also there, the point is, you reduce the time that a human picker walks around, and you maximize the time of value adding activity, which is really actually picking and putting it somewhere. Wrapping robots would just really be for very focused actually for wrapping pallets, so with foil for transport, but that has to be done by humans, and that's not a nice task to do, and also can just be automated this way, and then takes that really away from the human being. In robotic transport is just any type of A to B, or also pallet transport. So if we think to that picture in the beginning, I mean, in a fully optimized stage, really fully autonomous forklifts, but also smaller things like just, if you think about, you have a pallet that you put different things on, the Unilever example from the beginning. So let's say a supermarket needs 5 crates of beer, 2 crates of ketchup, and something else, and that pallet is moved through the warehouse, but then at the end it's put into a truck. Now the empty pallet is at the end of that warehouse and needs to be transported back to inbound. That's then something we could do with this type of solution. Inventory management is all about checking whether we actually have the inventory, the shopkeeping units in the locations where we expect them. Robotic arms, I think, relatively self-explanatory. Any type of piece picking, but also palletizing operations. So that means putting goods onto a pallet. And then really at the bottom, we have more of the software-based technologies. Yeah, so smart operations is our internal iOS, you could say. So that's like, where you then don't carry around a I don't know, piece of paper where you take notes, but you put this straight into an IT system so that you digitize the information immediately. Wearable devices is, for instance, using glasses for that point you already to where you should pick something, or also you can see on this picture a glove that has a scanner on it. Intelligent process automation, that's robotic process automation. In the end, I would say Excel Visual Basic for applications on steroids. Yeah, but more like a simple technology that automates very repetitive administrative tasks. Then we've got algorithmic optimization, that is anything related to analytics, forecasting, and so on. Supporting robots is everything that is not directly in the value generating process for logistics, but you can see here, for instance, a cleaning robot. Warehouses also have to be clean, and that's something which no one actually pays us for. So cleaning robots would be something in here. And as the tracking monitoring is the whole IoT story, Internet of Things, so sensors and so on, that that then allow us to track and also monitor condition of goods. Let's check. one team across the world we talked about, one reporting tool set as well. We can also show that in the discussion. And then, it's like come to transparency. And I think, Christian, then I'll have one video after this slide, and then maybe we can do a quick question break, or also a quick 10-minute break maybe, Cool. But so just wanted to mention, like we have this structured portfolio, and we have this global footprint. And so I also mentioned that I know at any given point in time what the footprint is around the world, but you see our regions over here. So it's just like abbreviations: Asia Pacific, Latin America, Greater China. This is mainland Europe, Middle East and Africa. For our purposes, just Europe, UKI, North America. And then you see what type of technology has what number of opportunities in which region. And also internally, of course, we know on average what is the payback period for these type of technologies. So is it something which takes a bit longer to pay back at this point in time, or is it something which has a very quick payback? So that we can then also maybe goes to the question that Florian had. If we look at where we can deploy these things, we would then also not only say, oh, this makes operational sense for your site, but we can also say this is typically the business case we expect. So that's the element of financial feasibility for that specific technology deployment. Yeah. And maybe if we then in the second part, we look also a bit at what digitalization means for working on these projects. So then we can also look into where I actually got these numbers from, and a bit into how we track and report. But before we do that, maybe wanted to check, does that work for viewing on your end if I show a video here, Christian?
Looks good.
Yeah. Okay. Because then I think also Christian said for him it's now popcorn. Yeah. So it's a 90-second video, but it's a compilation of what we then did in 2020. And then if I had any popcorn, I also would get it out now. But I'll let this run, and then maybe we can also break for a couple of questions afterwards.
So there's no sound. Maybe you need to share the sound as well.
Sorry?
There's no sound. Maybe
that's okay. I think that's
I
yeah.
doesn't have a...
No, I turned it off now, but it's just music.
Okay.
Yeah, so this, for instance, in robotic transport, autonomous forklifts. So you can see there's actually not a robot on there, but it's just moving by itself. And this is one of the inventory management solutions. Yeah, so this blinking light actually checks how many boxes are in a certain location. This is the automated shopping trolleys that I mentioned that drive to the Gruyere shelf, and then the picker puts it in there. This would be the wearable devices and smart ops. This is the self-moving shelves, so goods-to-person robots. And this robotic arm for palletizing and a pallet wrapper. Yeah, so I think actually 95 seconds in total. Was that too fast, or could you see some of those things? Good. Yeah, but then so because I hope that also, I think slides are nice, but videos then typically show also a bit of what it looks like in reality so far. So maybe you wanted to have a quick pause, or wanted to pause here for also further questions from the audience on this part before we then in the second step would look into how we use also digital tools to make this digital transformation come to life. Maybe dive a bit deeper into also the organizational aspects that we discussed already, and how you can form a team to work in a structured manner across regions, technology categories, and so on.
Are there any questions?
Yes, I would have a question. Could you please go back to the previous slide? Thank you very much. Okay, so basically, once you have all this information gathered in your table, is there, or rather, what is the kind of criteria that is going to allow you to prioritize some options? Here we can easily imagine that the greener ones are easier to implement, and they also have a lower average payback period. But are there other criteria?
Yeah. So what we actually see here is even after the fact. So it's these 150. You just like, this is now what we see being in opportunities in deployment. Yeah. So like based from this, I could for instance say it seems like in Europe, this algorithmic optimization category is is something which is deployed quite a lot. Yeah. And the point of what you ask is, how do we prioritize this? Yeah. And I mean that links, I think, to the also this question on organization, but we work in a very heterogeneous organization with different countries, different technologies, different labor rates, different sectors. Yeah. And that means also centrally, if I would have to decide all of this myself, I mean, it wouldn't work anyway. Yeah. Also, I couldn't think about all these things, but it's about then also enabling the organization to finding from this portfolio what works best for them. Yeah. And this is then, for instance, an example where we always look into at the end 3 criteria, yeah, which is for any given operation, is the technology mature enough? Yeah. So it's like, that's the thing. Is the technology ready to be deployed for that operation? And then is it operationally feasible? Yeah. So does it really work? And then also, is it commercially feasible? So do we have a payback? And these questions are then answered by a team of. Let us go back to the beginning that we discussed, to the Munich example. There would then be a discussion between the site manager, my product development manager, and the country lead and also regional lead, and they would say, okay, that makes sense because it will help us on that operational feasible. Technology is actually mature enough, technology maturity, and even if these two are the case, we may not see a commercial payback, but if we see a financial payback, then we actually say, okay, cool, that really works, let's get it done. And this would lead to just one of these 150 over here. Yeah.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Yeah, and also, so we won't go into detail here, but of course we have lots of different assessment tools. So, well, maybe just like one thing I wanted to show, because I don't fill this table myself all the time, but assume you can still see my screen.
Yes.
Yeah. So, this is like our global dashboard, so to say, for the 12 technologies which you see here. And then you also see that by now we actually grown opportunities quite a bit. Yeah. But then, to your point, what you could then do on here very easily, if you are in the retail sector in North America. Yeah. So I would just like then say, okay, which business unit am I in? And I go to retail. And then I know that I am in North America. Yeah, and then I would say already, okay, these technologies are what is deployed already in North America for retail. Yeah, and then for instance, if I say, oh, wait a sec, so I'm very interested in assisted picking robots, and then I drilled down now from 5,400 something, I don't know, to these 12 opportunities. Yeah, and this would then be for me already a starting point where I could then say, wait a sec, I should maybe call the guy, my colleague in Hanover Township. How did that work for you? What did you look for? And he would then also say, okay, cool, hopefully he would say, talk to Tim's team. Yeah, because they could then on our internal webpage, digital.supplychain.dhl, just look into products and solution assisted picking robots. And then, this is just like an internal web page, but here's where you find assessment tools, all these kind of things, so that we can drive that further. Yeah, one sec. Happy for more question while this loads. Yeah, but here I won't be able to download this right now. Here, Mohammed Fouda is one of my product development managers from Egypt. But then here, and I won't open this right now, but then here, for instance, you would be able to download technology one-pager. What is the perfect operations profile we look for? What's the process flow, how this works in operations? Case studies of the implementations. We saw at the moment 12 in retail for North America, and also comparisons of the different vendors that are in there. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.
Hello. Can I make a question?
Of course.
Yeah, great. So regarding the network effects that the professor taught us, mainly here as a platform between the three divisions, is there a platform that connects all the three divisions that you are asking for the data? You mentioned the Power BI, but not sure if this makes this work.
Yeah. No, so the Power BI is really DHL Supply Chain internal. So that's the scope. There is the 2,000 locations we have globally and our 150,000+ colleagues. Yeah. There are on the corporate level then. Yeah. So like, you know, if we have our divisions here, DHL Supply Chain being one of them, on the corporate level, there are center of excellence that look into areas where we believe there are more benefits from cross-divisional collaboration. Yeah, and so what you mentioned. So these platform things. There is, for instance, a center of excellence for the Internet of Things, for sensors. Yeah, because at the end of the day, if you track a letter, a parcel, I don't know, shoebox in a warehouse, the technology you need is relatively similar. Yeah, so it's, I don't know, it's one sensor, or it's a code or whatever. So where these things exist, Deutsche Post DHL has then on the corporate level across all divisions, a so-called center of excellence that we would then also tap into. Yeah, but for instance, these are, it's also, you can find this online as well. But in the space of Internet of Things, of APIs, application programming interfaces. So where we generally see also a large overlap between divisions, yeah. Because maybe like it was important to note there, it's all logistics, but a business like Post and Parcel Germany, where hundreds of thousands of letters are sorted and sent every day, is different to you know, moving big full pallets like we do, yeah. But finding that kind of common ground is then what happens also on the corporate level. If that answers your question.
Yeah, and I was actually focusing mostly on the data collection bit from all the three divisions, because I think that this is going to be even more challenging to try to facilitate everything, and in order to reach the desired outcome, to facilitate the operations, etc., by acquiring the data from all the divisions from all the countries, for example.
Yeah. So it's already challenging for one division. It will be very challenging. Yeah. As long so you can also, I mean, think there always, if it is computer generated information, so a barcode scan. Yeah. I mean, this is generally easier than if you have to ask someone somewhere for a project status or for a implementation opportunity for a robotic solution. That's always more challenging, because then humans have to be active. And I think all of us know that if you ask 12 people for the same thing, you'll get 12 different answers, and computers don't like completely unstructured different answers just yet. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
A pleasure. Thanks.
If I may, I've got a few questions, just from the organizational point of view. You were talking about a very heterogeneous portfolio, and I guess it is possible to have it because of your size. And I guess you'll be continuing to grow this and get even more heterogeneous. If it's possible, you were talking about additional costs, big additional costs to gain little parts of markets, but is your goal to even go further and try to reach market dominance, complete market dominance?
Yeah. See, but you mean now from the so contract logistics, so DHL Supply Chain basically as a
yes,
company.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we are already the largest, but largest worldwide in the contract logistics industry. Don't quote me on it, but it's not that we own 50% of that market by far. Yeah, I think it's rather in the single-digit market shares. But I think that's an interesting question. I think the like what we review very carefully is where can we tap into new markets or also new business models where our existing scale is already of an advantage. Yeah, because you can also think at the end of the day. So for me, myself, if I had to set up a warehouse now in Germany, it's okay. I could do it. It's not, it's no absolute rocket science. Yeah. So if I have the funds, I buy some land, I put some 4 walls on it, I put some racks in it, and I say, send me your goods, I'll store them and I deliver them. Yeah. And then I call a couple of truck companies and so on. Yeah. I don't think it's so. That's a relative commodity. But really, what we look for at DHL Supply Chain overall is like where can we actually use our footprint, and our know-how, and standardize this in a way that when we set up the next warehouse or the next country, we already have 80%, 90% ready and know exactly what we need to do. And then the 10% is really just the specific customization that's required for that specific country or that specific customer. Yeah. And maybe if, an example there would really be if, again, let's say we have lots of experience with food logistics. And so I'm making this up right now. Yeah. But really for Gruyere, storage and delivery, and then we actually say, wait a sec, in Switzerland we should really get in there. But I would really say, okay, we know exactly where that location should be, we know exactly how we set up the warehouses, we know exactly which technology from this portfolio we put in there, and we also know that this will be profitable because we know what the labor cost rate in Switzerland is, we know what the typical service prices are. So this is where we would like to go, as opposed to, okay, here's like somewhere where we can just like grow and have more, but not aligned, not standardized, not leveraging our existing knowledge type of business. That makes sense.
Yes. So so you're growing as a total, as a whole, by focusing on growing in the specific markets that you can make an impact on, or can be successful, and by having some of them or many of them, you can grow as the whole.
Yeah, and I think it's about not unstructured growth. Yeah, because just like adding additional, so just like, I mean, if we don't look at available money, but buying another logistics company is relatively easy. It's just about money. Yeah. And then you would be bigger. Yeah. But the point is, then you have 2 separate entities. And the idea is more, while they are, of course, to some extent separate, all of our warehouses are at the end of the day single locations, but like what's the connecting element and how can we use that as a standard to then grow our scale? And that maybe also goes back to the network effects. But if we then have scale effects, that the next warehouse that we build gets even easier, and we do it even better, and it benefits from all the other network we already have in place. That's where we would like to be then.
Okay. Second question I have: how green is your approach? You were talking about digitalization, and even with the shipping across the whole world, and being able to deliver even the same day, and maybe this increase of demand you were talking about, that maybe will backfire a little with the greener approach that is coming. How do you plan on maybe reversing some of the things you were implementing because of this tendency?
Yeah. No, I mean, so within DHL Supply Chain, also in Deutsche Post DHL, we have a very, very big agenda on ESG, environmental, societal, governmental aspects. And of course, if you look at the pages, how I outlined the need for digitalization, I think that we could even add now, always the point on that it should be more environmentally friendly, sustainable, zero carbon emissions. Yeah. So Deutsche Post DHL also has a target of 0 carbon emissions. I don't even know by when. Yeah, but really reducing, of course, also our CO2 footprint a lot. And that's there's a different team looking into this. It's not me per se. Yeah. So like when we would look also into of course, thinking about, do the pallet wrapping robots actually use less foil? Is using robots running on batteries better than or using less energy than other types of material handling equipment? But if you would look into the new warehouses we build, there's a different team that then ensures we try to build these as environmentally friendly as possible. So meaning smart technology for energy management inside, but also, of course, solar panels for energy generation, insulation technologies, and so on. But that's even a different part of DHL supply chain. And there's also then the same agenda in the other divisions. Yeah. Most complex still. I mean, if you look into global air freight, yeah, and using planes, so that question of CO2 neutral air traffic is a big one. Yeah, it's not one which I look into professionally, but it's of course it's a big challenge for humanity in general, I think. Yeah.
So it goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
And last question about the robotics, the different types of robots you were talking about. I saw a amputee that was able to generate this soft touch to grab something. Maybe this kind of technology could help, maybe in a bigger scale, not only a hand, but maybe a big lever that could pick up the boxes, even if they have a little dent, or I don't know, because it senses when to stop putting pressure on. He can lift up apples. He can take his glasses off only by maybe focusing on this.
Yeah, and I think there are lots of these technological innovations at the moment. Yes, so we're also working on the robotic arm side. What you're ordering right now, I mean, this is even if an amputee and they connected, I guess, to then the neural system of that amputee, likely, yeah. But maybe two thoughts on this. One thing we look into is also actually using AI for learning how to grip objects. Yeah, that's but that's like not what we want to scale at the moment, but it's just like recent discussions with different players in the market, because also there you have a gripper and you just you train this gripper and you give him lots of different objects, yeah, hundreds of thousands of times, and it grabs like this, falls, grabs like this, falls. But then if it grabs correctly, that's like then you can say like a reinforcement learning approach, that then this gripper actually learns how to grab different things. Yeah, so that's one thing we look into, but that is relatively nascent still. And similarly, the idea of exoskeletons or bionic enhancements. Yeah, so you mentioned now an amputee that then can grab something again, I think, which is on a totally different level, very important and like a really cool human achievement. But there are also now exoskeletons that you put on like a backpack, and that allow you to lift. And so I mean, I had a trainee in my team, and she's now looking into these type of technologies for DHL, and she was able to lift easily 3 crates of beer then. Yeah, so because you have this exoskeleton and it supports your back, and then you don't lift with your back actually anymore, but it is like an external skeleton that helps you to lift these type of things. And now think about, again, to the labor squeeze, if you would have suddenly I think the worst job in the industry, container unloading. Yeah, container from China arrives, you open it, and you just have to get the boxes out. But now this is like a job. Of course, you can use some advanced automation equipment or robots for that. But also, if you don't have to do this back-breaking work anymore, but can wear an exoskeleton, suddenly people of all age could do it. Yeah, you don't have to be a big guy, but also slimmer and less physically strong people could do it. So that's also an opportunity in that space. Cool.
And you were also talking about the human eye recognizing handwriting on the label. Isn't it already automated to fill out the form and to be printed on? Are there still people sending handwritten packages?
Yeah. So let's say it depends on the package and where you look. Yeah, but so usually, of course, for us, like, I think also the algorithms that we have to recognize handwriting are very good. Yeah, because like millions of letters are sent every day, and that's like the perfect learning examples in post and parcel. Yeah, but there, with 2,000 warehouse locations globally, in some locations, so if you go to a warehouse in India or in Thailand or in Tanzania, you may not yet have everything completely digitized. Yeah, then lots of stuff still happens still on paper, and then very often this is like the link to this intelligent process automation category. You would then actually say, just take a picture of the proof of delivery document. Take a picture, yeah, and you saw this wearable that this guy had on his arm, yeah. Now imagine he just takes that off, takes a picture of that proof of delivery document, and that is then read and transferred into the system directly. And these are things which we are already working on today.
Okay. Okay.
Cool.
That's all for me. Thank you very much.
Thanks. But if this was the what we do and what digital transformation and digitalization and digitization in logistics means, then we also touched upon already a bit of the managing this across a heterogeneous team, heterogeneous technologies, and so on. And just wanted there to quickly outline to you that you saw this dashboard, this Power BI dashboard in that case. But what that allows us to do is, it's actually real time. But that also allows us to manage the pipeline very in a very focused manner over time. Yeah? So you just like see here the development from January last year till December last year. You also saw that by now we actually grew much further already. And just like this is one element, that digitalization offers a huge benefit for making information transparent and actionable, and more actionable than it was before. Yeah, because it would have been really difficult for me even 4 years back to say, okay, for these 12 technologies, even if we have that technology portfolio and we have our team set up, it would be very difficult to say, okay, where do we actually stand globally? What really is the impact of those technologies across all the different regions? Where do we stand? Where are roadblocks? And this transparency for data, or this transparency of data internally, also then helps that no matter whether I talk to someone in Latin America or in Australia, that we talk on the same single source of truth of where we stand, where our issues are, and then also not only across geographic layers, but also in terms of hierarchical organizational levers. Yeah, so no matter whether I talk to my boss or to our CEO, or someone else talks to his regional CEO, they would always use the same foundation, and that just enables the team to a large extent to really then work effectively, as you quickly have access to the true picture of reality. Yeah, and I think that's just like an example of how these tools help in digital transformation. And that's the internal view, and I think I've shown you. Maybe I'll bring this up quickly again. But I've shown you the like this view here. I'm not going to go into detail, but of course this information you can then slice in lots of different ways. Yeah, and just wanted to show you that the same information, there is then actually we have lots of different views behind. So we could of course slice that by customer. Yeah, so what do we see from a customer perspective? Which technology is applied? This view is by region. Yeah, then we also have country deployment status. We have vendor analysis. So, if you think about procurement and scale effects in procurement, if actually now DHL Supply Chain knows how many projects we do with a certain vendor now, how many we plan next year, it's a big advantage for using our scale effects also in procurement. And the opportunity here really is all of this based on the same single source of truth of data, and important to underline, not put in by me personally, yeah, but by the people that are closest to the actual action. So in this case, then our country leads. Yeah.
May I ask a question on this?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I said that we want to let you continue, but
yeah, you're the boss.
That's just too interesting. So, and I had this question before. So, how many of the technologies do you buy on the market, and how many do you do yourself? So, I remember seeing the headline that Deutsche Post they made their own e-delivery truck. And I can imagine that that's quite a big project. But then some of the other things, like software based, I can imagine that that's something you can do yourself. And it's so.
But
the make or buy that you do.
So generally, we work, so we are a logistics company, not a technology company. Yeah, so we would buy from the market, or we would co-develop. Yeah, generally. So this means the technologies that we also saw, like we don't claim to be the best in building forklifts or also robots. Yeah, but in these agreements we work with a selected portfolio of vendors and then also work with them to improve their product even further. Yeah, you can often think, why we are interesting for these vendors is because we are a very large company and they say, honestly, if you have 2,000 locations come on for our product, you must have at least 10 or 15 or whatever it is. And then we would say, we don't only have 15, we have 30 for this year. So let's work on a commercial agreement that works for us, but then also let's work on making your product better jointly. Yeah, so that's one element in there. We still have then, if you look especially into the more software aspects, sometimes like a proprietary twist on it. So, for instance, these wearable devices that we saw, these smart operations, what we call it. Yeah, that is something where we would then also do some development ourselves, because that is really then something which will be internally applicable to all of our locations. And then there is a benefit in also developing this ourselves. Yeah. And lastly, but that's also something, so it's not huge at this point in time, but we look for more of these cases where we actually have enough internal scale to also warrant incubation then. Yeah, and incubation would then really be where we say, okay, wait a sec, so this is something we as DHL Supply Chain have that big a demand for it, and there is in the marketplace at the same time nothing on there yet. And if we then say, okay, that is something where we should develop something ourselves, we would also move forward. But it's not massively reflected in our portfolio at this point in time. Yeah. And maybe last point on that one, Christian, because it's also interesting if we think about again the different countries we work with, the idea of frugal innovation. Yeah, so it doesn't always have to be the most advanced robot, but you could think, for instance, we monitor very closely if we, for instance, see these robots that move autonomously through the aisles that we saw in the video. But that is something which doesn't yet have a payback in all our countries. But then we have sometimes, very innovative people in our countries on the ground. So for instance, the Turkish team, and they said, it doesn't have to be fully autonomous, but we actually put the algorithm that is on these robots on our standard trolleys. Then at least we have the route optimization while we still push it through our lines. But that's then something where you combine different technologies and then maybe even make something work now already for a limited time before then the fully fledged technology gets cheap enough or labor cost increase enough that there's a business case also for the other type of technology. Cool. Yeah, but if that was internally, as this idea of using digitization also for managing a program. If the previous view was really internally, this is like something which we then also do to, or the concept we apply for ensuring our customer feedback. Yeah, so of course, main driver to see if we're successful in the customer space would be how many new business projects do we do with accelerated digitalization technologies, how high is our renewal rate, so how many customers do renew their contracts with us. All of that we look into, but also what you see on here is based on just an internal survey, I think, which most companies would do with their customers, so that every quarter you send a survey to your customer and you say, hey, how we're doing. It's a structured questionnaire, and what we then do is there's like one question in there which asks whether we are perceived as being innovative and bringing insights, and that's then of course a good external view on how well we are doing, with our digitalization agenda. And so far, this is percentage. Actually, you can take the percentage out, but it was a negative score in Q1, has overall moved up quite a lot, and I hope that for Q1 2021 it will be even higher. Yeah, but also here the point is that we try to use digitalization and digitization to get a better understanding what's the reality, what's the real picture, not only in terms of deployments, but also in terms of how do our customers see us, how do our employees see us, how do our investors see us, and all these different elements to really steer the program properly. Cool. Yeah, and I think we'll be done just in time also for a bit more Q&A. One thing I wanted to pick up on platforms really. So now zooming out a bit from frameworks and KPIs. But one thing we, that's maybe also, Christian, to your question, that we actually develop ourselves in a partnership with Microsoft and Blue Yonder. Blue Yonder is a so-called warehouse management system software. But, you know, we were discussing also platforms in the beginning, yeah? And you saw all the different robots now. And one thing that then is a case in point where we saw actually an internal demand for a certain type of technology that was large enough to actually go into this type of development agreement was what we call the robotics hub. And, you know, I'll go briefly through what this is, and I also just shared it right in the beginning, the easiest example, but that's really an example for something which we drove internally. Still remember the slide when we first had the concept of this one in, I think, May 2019, and that's something real right now. And in the end, you can think it's like a USB port where you on one side plug different robots in, on the other side you plug in different warehouse management systems. Yeah, warehouse management systems is what we use to know in any of these warehouses where is a certain good, and also to then organize orders and send tasks so that, you know, if I have my wearable device on my wrist, it tells me, okay, Tim, now you have to pick up 2 packets of Gruyere in aisle 15. Yeah, and basically the idea, we have the robotic portfolio, we have our warehouse management systems, and how do we make that connection that the robots are linked into these tasks as efficiently possible as we can. Yeah. And there, you know, just like some pictures again. So of course, you know, this self-moving shelf example needs to be connected to the warehouse management systems that we can actually move it around to deliver shelves with required items for orders. Similarly, on this one, you know, you see a robot down here moves this pallet. I don't even know what is in there, but most likely the warehouse management system sent a task and said, move this over to the outbound location because we need 3 parcels of whatever is in here. Over there, these we already discussed. Yeah, you can think about different orders with different lines of items, 5 socks, 4 packets of cheese, what else? Yeah, so also needs to be connected to the warehouse management system. And, you know, this happened before always in this way that you would have, you know, this is like a site where it works and we have this vendor, so we would build that connection once. Yeah. But what we now did with Microsoft and Blue Yonder is that we just built this USB plug in between, where on one side you plug in the robotic vendor and then you plug in our warehouse management system, but you don't have to redo these connections anymore. Yeah. So that's, I think, a very clear a platform concept, but helps us a lot. If we think back to Soam's question, how do we assess this if we now have a nice case and we say, okay, could work operationally, technology is there, cool. Oh, wait a sec, you know, the business case doesn't work. And why does it work? Because we have to build this custom connection on the IT side. Very sad. Now it already exists and we can just plug it in. Yeah. And that's, so I think just like one of these examples I also wanted to bring here, because that's really one of these platform things that we also developed last year and are still building out as we speak. And you find more on this online. I think it has been relatively broadly marketed, at least in the logistics area. Yeah, and this is actually a picture from the Microsoft Inspire conference last year. And we were all very happy that this was featured so prominently on there. Yep. And then, so to finish, yeah. So because like how does all of that then come together? So really the vision that we have with accelerated digitalization is to optimize supply chains end to end, not replacing human labor, but using best-in-class robotic solutions and actionable data to optimize our workforce, humans, robots, whatever you think, to deliver customer orders as efficiently as possible. Yeah, you see here, you know, these are all the technologies that we went through today. Picture of a warehouse, and then at the bottom, this idea of algorithmic optimization, where you can look into tasks, what's the most important one, resources, who can actually do that task most efficiently, inventory, where do you put your pallets in a warehouse, and then also lastly, the network aspect of transport operations. And what we just discussed right now with this robotic sub aspect, the next step there is then really what we call resource orchestration. And the idea here is continuously optimizing, your task order based on the resources you have available. Yeah. So the opportunity, our scale as DHL Supply Chain, actually in that space is that the data we collect, we know priority of certain orders. Yeah, maybe if Christian orders something, that's more important than if I order something, and if we know this order priority, and we know all the different items on an order, and we also know how many of our human pickers come in today, tomorrow, or the day after, how many of our robots are active at the moment, then we can fix a certain element. For instance, saying we want to fix resource footprint and just cost of labor, robotic and human labor, and do it most efficiently. Or we could also say, let's fix time and just be as fast as possible, but let's then optimize which resources we use to get that time fulfilled as efficiently as possible. Yeah? And I think that's really the outlook. So after only so it's still a long journey, but after complementing our human workforce with robotic, the next step would then really be to orchestrating human and robotic labor using actionable data to deliver best-in-class logistics services. But that's a bit of an outlook, and that's also then 4 minutes prior to the hour where the slides end. And then Christian, maybe we have time for a couple of more questions.
Thanks very much, Tim. Are there any further questions? Panagiotis, you had one?
Yes. Yes. Just regarding the COVID situation, I can imagine that the demand was higher. So I wanted to ask which was the, if there was any force to adopt additional technological improvements, or if it showed that there is a need for more human force during this situation because of the unexpected high demand, I suppose.
Yeah. First of all, a very good question. And so, I think what the pandemic showed was, first of all, an overall need for everything which we talked through today. So really optimizing your workforce, because there was such a demand for these logistics services, just went through the roof, and everybody was like, oh my God, how can we do this? Given then that you actually can't put just more people in, because, still you can't have hundreds of people in one part of the warehouse being close to each other because the infection risk is way too high. Yeah. So I think first real effect was underlining the need for, using best available workforce, robotic, human, automation, whatever it is. Yeah. Second element was actually additional technologies that came into place, which were quite cool. So, for instance, in Latin America, our team installed, instead of a standard turnstile where you put your company ID card in, they installed a camera that had face recognition and also temperature scans. Yeah, so then you can discuss whether temperature is really the best indicator of COVID, but still, this was then something where we use technology to get our operations up quickly again. Yeah. And maybe the positive example there is, temperature is one thing, but then you could also check whether people were actually wearing masks. Yeah. So, and if you didn't wear your mask, then you can't get into the warehouse. Yeah. You can still take it off inside, but then, this was things that we looked into on that end. And we even had, so we just also give you an idea what was quite nice in that space for us on this page. So we actually had a dedicated page for COVID-19 digital measures, which is then really looking exactly into these type of things. Yeah. So just looking. So for instance, physical distancing, contact tracing tools, disinfection bots. Yeah. So we had robots looking into robots that spray disinfection, type of things, remote working solutions. We can't go get on site anymore. Labor sharing. Yeah. So, labor was squeezed. And I think there was a question that Franziska asked earlier. But there was actually a labor sharing app developed that we could across a campus then look into different things and so on. Yeah. But sorry, I'm taking too much time. And there is one more question. Definitely. I see someone raising his hand.
Hi, I am based on Latin America. I listened that Mercado Libre and the DHL are making together like an association.
Yeah.
But what kind of this relationship is strategic and specific, or it could be replaced I think, by Mercado Libre and develop their own shipping. What do you think of that?
Yeah. Yes, I think so. For Odile on the call, so Mercado Libre, and Jorge, you know this better than I, of course, but it's like a bit like Amazon, eBay for Latin America, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so again, there's a strategic partnership with Mercado Libre and DHL Supply Chain in Latin America right now. And you know, we like lots of the things that we discussed on our session here. You know, we're also then discussing with Mercado Libre in Latin America. To your question, yeah, the question is whether Mercado Libre thinks that their competitive advantage is actually also in logistics, and that they can do an even better job in logistics than they can do with DHL Supply Chain. And I think that's the competition that, you know, we, myself and everyone in our company also has to accept. Yeah, so if Amazon says, wait a sec, we do delivery ourselves, we build up our own logistics, if they think they can do that better than we do, that's a competitive pressure that we have to accept, because we have to be better in that space. Yeah. And I think it's at the end, it's really, it's again about scale. We have that scale a bit more across all sectors. Amazon, Mercado Libre will be really large scale in retail. But I think that's I think one of the big competition questions in logistics at the moment. I would say is at least undecided for now. Yeah. You can also then link into all the questions on whether Amazon, Mercado Libre, and DHL are frenemies or a co-opetition and so on. Yeah, but I think it's an exciting question to look into.
Okay, thanks.
One more, so I'm happy to stay on a bit longer. Antoine.
Yes, hello, Mr. Tetzlaff. First of all, I would like to thank you about your intervention. It is very interesting. So my question is about the Internet of Things. I didn't heard this word in our discussion, but what do you think about this? Is it already used in the supply chain of DHL, and how do you think about the future of Internet of Things, 5G, etc.?
Yeah. So like on this, I'll just like show you. I hope I mentioned Internet of Things maybe 2 or 3 times, maybe not prominently enough. But so this category on here, which is called asset tracking and monitoring, that's in the end for us the Internet of Things in the sense of sensors. Yeah. So this would be knowing at any point in time where is a certain good in the supply chain and which condition is it in. Yeah. So that, for instance, if you then add capable mobile networks on top of it, that we would know the vaccine has been cooled throughout the entire supply chain, and you can actually see it on your tablet while the doctor waits for the shipment to arrive. Yeah, but that is really I think in there what we look for, and the aspiration that we have that is implemented to some extent already, the visibility we have oftentimes. Yeah, so like we would know where is a shipment, what condition is it in, and so on. So that is the tracking aspect. The next thing there will really be, and that's when Internet of Things really shows even more value, is when you look into how can you use this actually for creating more value. That's, you know, when you, for instance, can then anticipate, you know, where does a certain squeeze in the supply chain happen? You know, how many people do I need at the unloading door tomorrow because I have all of these different goods coming in? Yeah, and then if you collect that data, you will know, you know, tomorrow, but then also next year you will know for every year of the previous year, and then you can adapt even better and optimize on even better pictures of the reality based on those sensors and the Internet of Things. Yeah, but I won't show this now, but we have hundreds of thousands of roll cages connected to our IoT hub. It's a different team, but then you could really see for a supermarket provider in the UK, where are all these different trolleys at the moment. And one of them is, for some funny reason, drowning in the sea between the UK and France. Yeah, at least that's what the dashboard tells us. Yeah, so yeah.
Okay, fine, thank you.
Cool.
Do we have one more pressing question? If not, then please join me in thanking Tim for his time, for the excellent insights into the logistics industry. This has been a blast. Thanks so much, Tim. I think we all enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Definitely best meeting of the day for me. Yeah. Yeah, good questions and even questions I could answer. So that was something I enjoyed a lot. Yeah. No, cool guys. Yeah, and we'll make Christian and I will make the slides available, and yeah, maybe we can also share some just like public links that are available online anyway. So you guys can also follow up on everything that we discussed.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Tim.
Cool. Thank you very much, everyone.